This woman casually joined her fellow rivermen into the Navy headquarters. With the energy of the devil fruit, Hanana and Nomi, she easily controlled them all. That's right, you heard it right. After the success of Part 1, the live-action Part 2 was officially released, promising to bring interesting experiences to the audience. So, can it twist the previous part? Let's take a look. On the sea, Usopp had just joined the team and realized that he lacked raw materials. Compared to the pirates, the lack of a team entering the Great Voyage is like self-destruction. Therefore, he and Sanji discussed with the navigator to move the forest to a certain island, loading up their belongings. Big Sister Nami quickly found Lang Lai Island. However, they could not take the main route because there were countless dangerous traps. The best way to get there is to cross the mountain of Hong Tui Road. Luffy wasn't very interested at first, until Nami mentioned the magic, where the pirate king Roger, who had been killed by a lion, was also present. But he felt overwhelmed by his vitality and asked to check in as much as he could. Back in time, when Roger was about to go on stage, the people of the province are crowded like grass ants. In the stone house, Vice Admiral Garp visits an old friend. These two village elders have been playing for the tired garden cats for many years, but Roger was fast. This time, he came to report the death of the pirate king. He was about to die, but Roger still had time to ask Garp to take care of his little son. He insisted that he was not guilty of his father's pirate king's eyes, and he knew Garp was a good man. After listening, although he was irritated on the outside, he still accepted the offer in his heart. Back in the present, Luffy's ice have landed. Each person had a liter of food to hunt, so the whole team decided to go their separate ways and made an appointment to meet in the evening. Even so, they still had to throw each other back because Luffy's face on the wanted warrant was now singing gradually. The whole group just dispersed without knowing that they were being watched. In another corner of the city, we meet Smoker, the Vice Admiral of the Navy who has just captured a horn pirate. He sat down and ordered the soldiers to throw him in. Meanwhile, Nami was indulging in the meaning of the world map books. Seeing this, Usopp was nervous, thinking that she would draw her own map by herself in the future. Nami was very happy to hear that. She encouraged Usopp to do something for herself as well, such as her hometown or relatives. Very quickly, a name came to Usopp's mind. He immediately used the lotus nail to transmit the message to the drawing door. At the same time, the lost young man Rozo was wandering around looking for a sword shop when he accidentally hit a pink ball. As soon as he looked at her face, Rozo stood in the picture for 5 seconds because she was exactly the same as her old friend. Only the name was Tashigi. After that, Jojo immediately rushed into a nearby sword shop, smashing money on the table to buy hot goods. The old shopkeeper looked at the pile of money and expressed his disdain, saying that it is still difficult to buy a broken copper. But when he saw the fine sword on Rozo's hip, his eyes lit up. He always asked for a test, and then exchanged that sword, taking 3 other corn demon sticks plus a little change. But people are not equal to nature, and at this moment Tashigi walked in. With the eyes of an expert, she peeled off his sword, which was the top in the world, and the price must be millions. The old master was peeled off, but his face turned pale because he lost the bargain. Taking the opportunity to have a once in 1,000 years, Rozo asked for a living dictionary. Tashigi advised her on choosing things, and she nodded her head in agreement. Moments later, Rozo was attracted to a black treasure sword. Tashigi hurriedly reprimanded him and warned that this was a cursed turtle, and whoever used it would die one day. The shopkeeper also sweated and advised Rozo to leave and become a human. But my brother is never bored with anyone. Rozo declared to see if the curse of this sword was stronger or if my luck was greater. After speaking, he threw the sword in the air and stretched out his arm to support it. A news thriller for both viewers and sellers. Twisting, the falling sword fell to the ground, close to his side without scratching a single feather from him. Too prestigious. Rozo secured this black treasure sword and told the shopkeeper to get another one, for a full set. In another development, Luffy and Sanji are blocking the food shopping area. Gathered all kinds of things, Luffy separated the group of young people to search for the old magic school. Coincidentally, Nami joined them into the head of the Bartolomeo chicken. With an exceptional level of plagiarism, Nami quickly boiled his wallet clean. Returning to the sword shop, witnessing Rozo's peak dignity scream, the shopkeeper was completely submissive. He always treasured the prostitute. One of the 50 weirdest swords in the world gave to Rozo. He nodded in admiration. It was the sword that had chosen its own owner. Naturally grabbing a basket of delicious food, Rozo has 3 swords. The guy thanked the beautiful Tashigi and walked out of the store coolly. Night fell, and the stupid Luffy was still wandering around looking for the magic field. Just then, Bartolomeo came to the rafters to lead the way. In fact, he was craving Luffy's wanted bounty, but it was good. Pulling each other to a nearby chain, Oh well, Luffy immediately collapsed the big trap set by Buggy's teeth. Not only the clown Buggy Queen, but also Anna and Vita who accompanied her. Luffy saw the two former enemies combined, and his eyes were filled with the letter A. And Vita was hating this boy to the dew, because of the crime of crushing his ship in the past. So this kind of criticism must fully account for both principle and interest. Without saying much, Luffy immediately punched his opponent in the face with an extremely tense Gomu Gomu. But, unfortunately, the fist with the touch of the body slipped away. It turned out that Anvita had just bitten the Devil Fruit Super Nami, and she dodged all physical attacks. Taking advantage of the moment when Luffy was confused, Anvita groped him and flew him away. Buggy seized the opportunity to pull the limited edition handcuffs to lock Luffy tightly, discarding his martial arts. Now the couple is ready to reveal their main love. At the same time, Colonel Smoker received secret information that the city was being murked by pirates. He then called my assistant to write down the books and go to quell the riots. On this side, the Shade Hat team gathered locally to discover that the captain was missing. At the end of the way, the whole group had to go 3 legs and 4 legs to search. It's not wrong, at the squad, the Buggy couple is opening a trial, self-editing, to try Luffy. The death penalty was finalized, and the whole group of juniors applauded in approval. In a critical situation, beloved comrades appeared in time. Invita's juniors went up the river, and the two sides rushed into the battle. Nami and Usopp coordinate their Infinity EQ, throwing special bombs that break Invita's slippery leg protection, causing Invita's to be overwhelmed. In the midst of the chaos, the Navy also arrived. Tashigi rolled his eyes, realizing that Zozo turned out to be a pirate, who was also a pirate. At the top of the execution tower, Buggy tied up Luffy, held a knife to his neck, and asked before logging out if he wanted the moon to deny anything. Luffy took a deep breath and shouted that he would find a One Piece and become the king of pirates. He was almost dead, but he still had time to smile and apologize to the brothers for not being able to continue with him later. That branded smile smashed Smoker's psychology, making him immediately remember the legend of Zozo in the past. Just as the knife was about to slash down, a huge bolt of lightning from the sky struck Buggy's head, knocking down the tower of execution. Luffy fell to the ground and escaped death in Bartolomeo's stunned surprise. After that, he hurriedly reunited with his comrades and ran away on 3 legs and 4 claws. While running, Zozo was stopped by Tashigi. She was angry and hurt her eyes because she accidentally gave a path, helping a pirate buy a good sword. The two sides rushed to choose each other. At first, Zozo had a lot of resistance, but after dancing a few basic lines, he easily defeated Tashigi and turned the car to leave, leaving her sitting on the ground hugging a lump of anger. On the other side of the front line, Luffy and his brother Sanji are clashing with Smoker. Both of them are bloodied and rush to attack, but Sanji is quickly dug up. Luffy punches Smoker in the face with a series of owls. Tightly, he brought out the devil fruit, turning his body into a haze of smoke. Physically punching him is just like scratching an itch. Turning the tables, Smoker smashed Luffy with smoke and strangled him to the ground. Your life is not even worthy of the arrest warrant, and then prepare to see Luffy off to worship his grandparents. Just as 1,000 pounds hung by the hair, a mysterious uncle suddenly appeared to stop Smoker's fatal blow. The boy's moment was not over yet, and then he evaporated and touched his muscles. Sanji hurriedly ran over to pull Luffy up. Both of them were dumbfounded. They didn't understand which spiritual force had just saved them, so let's just escape to the ship. In the distance, the uncle watched the ship, smiling with satisfaction that Luffy was now officially a pirate. That night in a bar, Tashigi is still dying for being beaten by Rozo. Suddenly, the beautiful Sister Robin came over to ask for a honeymoon. Ignoring Tashigi's cold attitude, Robin sobbed and praised her intelligence and talent, and immediately threw a business card that lured her to join another organization. As soon as the door of the secret shop opened, touching the mold and entering, the beautiful woman was invisible without a trace. Mr. Smoke was also angry at this time and wanted to explode his lungs because he wanted to live without Luffy. He stopped to imagine Rozo's silhouette and gritted his tongue to recognize the two men in the same gut. Ever since Rozo flew colors, everyone knows about the unjust love, so the world is full of pirates. Smoker is determined not to let the seedlings crack their eyes, as Luffy inherited the will of the Pirate King. Closing the book, he will go straight to the Great Voyage to eradicate the grass at the root and carry Tashigi with him. The next morning, Luffy's ship docked at the foot of Rivers Mountain. The gate officially began the path to the Great Voyage. The whole team was in high spirits, full of armor and full of blood, ready to welcome the storms ahead. The sail was not long in coming. The whole crew was lucky to pass the mountain tournament. However, waiting for them in front of them are the big teeth of whales. When he regained consciousness, Luffy found himself lying on the shore alone. It turned out that before that, thanks to the aura of the main character, he was thrown out, and his companions were not so lucky. When he was lying like silk and didn't know how to deal with it, he clashed with the uncle of the lighthouse guard. With a ghostly flick of arrogance, the forbidden uncle struck a powerful anesthetic-infused dart from a distance, knocking down the whale in one note. When he was done, he turned to advise him to go far away, to be less delusional and accept the truth. Of course, he said no. He insisted on dragging his brothers out, and by the way, he picked up his uncle. Running out of ways with a muddy young man, the uncle had to tell the tearful story. Baby Laban was lonely, listened to music too much, so he followed his tail, killed him, and became a core member of the ship. He loves Laban like an egg, ready to protect it at all costs. It turns out that he has been working as a lightkeeper for many years. Who doesn't like it? But animals also criticize him. Until one day, the Lungba pirates stopped by. In this gang, the Lord was extinct, singing and singing, and also led a whale named Laban. Hearing the smell of the ears, C.A. Lyce sent Laban to his uncle while the whole team entered the great voyage. Before leaving, they also promised to return soon to pick up Laban. But in the first life, who could have guessed the word suspicious? He heard that the ice lake was all coming out, but Laban stubbornly refused to believe it. He pushed his head against the cliff every day, determined to bypass the narrow ravine to swim into the great voyage to find his brothers. If the uncle hadn't thrown sedative darts every day, this fish would have demonized itself because of its stubbornness for a long time. However, due to an overdose of drugs, Laban is gradually reluctant to take the drug, and the effect is completely reduced. After listening, when Face shed tears of sympathy, he said that there must be a way to clear his brain to understand the truth. The uncle heard that he was so deaf and immediately turned and always looked back at the machine. You yourself can't even accept that your teammates are colored. On this side, Nami's group trapped in Laban's stomach is still living with gritted teeth and desperately looking for a way out. The young man Usopp had a doubt, believing that in the stomach of this ship-swallowing whale there must be a usable device. So the long-nosed brother dragged San Z to steal things, leaving Rozo and Big Sister Nami to rack their brains to plan an escape. Rozo plans to use the pig launcher he just made, wanting to skewer into Laban's sensitive launch bag so that it sneezes, taking the opportunity to escape, but Nami doesn't think it's a good idea. While she was confused, an older sister called her name and came to steal Nami's compass. At first I looked sluggish on my muscles, but somehow I was stopped by Sanji and Usopp. The two guys also captured the fruit companions alive. It turns out that these two brothers and sisters are plotting to steal the Going Merry to escape. When it came to work, the whole gang and this couple interrogated again. Looking at the stubborn, smug features boasting about the abilities of these two, Rozo immediately smelled a familiar smell. The number is that the other day, he once encountered a guy named MJ7. He recruited him into the multi-level organization Broco Up. Uninterested, Rozo skewered the guy in two, and now he was looking at MJ9 with the same awe-inspiring eyes. Rozo quickly threw their mother into the acid sea in the form of whale boots, but Nami hurriedly stopped her. She didn't think Luffy would like this. Even though he has just been saved by Nami, this stick jackfruit is still flawed. Turning to Nami for the crime of holding a cigarette with a corn pulp compass. Laugh at the apricot, disseminate knowledge immediately and always in the great voyage. The chaotic magnetic field is short-circuited, and the compass usually only has water and garbage. If you want to survive, you must have a specialized item called a guideline. Seeing that the chicken pirates were blurry, there were no delicious foods, and I didn't even know what the hell the guideline was. This stick can be laughed and mocked. As soon as the ghost was tense, the baby cried out in mud and woke up. The whale swung violently, the whole ship shook violently, and the people fell to their feet. It was cheap in a situation of thousands of pounds hanging by the hair. The sister is stunned. This stick looks so thorny, but in fact he accidentally saved the whole bunch. Or the worst thing is to pull the young Usopp to retain the leper. Outside, Luffy originally planned to play the tiger reporting system, standing with his neck tendons up and shouting mud. But seeing that the whale was wrong and didn't bother to move, he immediately turned around and changed his tactics. He cleared his throat and sang the same song that the old pirates of the Mud used to sing. Unfortunately, this psychological whipping tactic is strangely sensitive. Seeing that the mud mule began to smell of looking at him, Luffy took advantage of the arrogance of the detailed brain technique. He shot a moral statement about living in the world. Meeting is the word fate. Some people come and go, but there will inevitably be those who choose to stay with them. Closing down the speech, Luffy begged the fish to spit out his brother, and Mud obediently complied. The Going Merry successfully launched again, crawling two more reluctant revenges. Before pulling out the anchor to go on, the gang held a farewell party for lunch with the uncle. Nami and the others whispered to Luffy about capturing the two prisoners. By the way, Nami also lamented the fact that the magnetic field was short-circuited. Compasses are often discarded, and the whole tape has no preparation. Whoever is cheap, the good uncle always sponsors the tool that's going to be the male needle, which Nami needs to break his neck. Then, before continuing to sail, Luffy showed off his artistic talents, painting the Straw Hat Pirate flag logo on the boredom of the mud mule. He warned that from now on, it is forbidden to hit your head on a rock, scratch the plum of this super cool tattoo. These guys are gone and will come back to pick you up. After a tearful farewell, the whole majestic crew continued their journey. As soon as the train disappeared, the uncle pulled out a photo of the dirty former king and bride to confide in him. Skillfully, this kid is the true destiny of the heavenly son that my brothers have always been looking for. The last person who can pick the One Piece should. Moving the orange to the Navy side, Mr. Koi is bitterly wanting to chase Luffy to the end. Strict in the administrative procedures of the Old Forest, if you want to go on a big voyage, you have to ask the permission of the big boss Garp. Tashigi mentioned many power cases, but Mr. Koi stroked his hair and replied, "What kind of nail is the law? I care about it." As soon as he finished the sentence, Vice Admiral Garp led two kindergartners, Kobe and Himaibo, to land at the Chow Castle to talk. Should the two uncles and grandchildren rush into the martial arts to follow Luffy or not? Garp heard that Luffy was like a dirty strawberry and brushed it off. The boss wasn't there, the boss didn't know. That guy has the same charisma as a dirty strawberry. I know my boss defends my nephew, but Garp interrupted at once and always. He was young and green. He analyzed backwards how the pirate ship could climb a mountain like a Navy ship, but it was not yet a great voyage that had sunk. Closing with the Straw Hat is now just a particle of dust. The Navy was worried that the Kingdom of Alabasta was about to go into civil war. The princess evaporated without a trace. Already, the Revolutionary Army is constantly driving chickens, recruiting damp forces to overthrow the world government. But that's not the main thing. Garp came all the way here to deliver his coffee to the Mustangs and to hunt the Brockwood Dark Organization. These octopus trunks stretch out all over the seas, clamping down on the Great Sea Route. And recently even upside down the outpost of the Exo Treo outpost. This organization operates so secretly that the Navy has not caught any clues. The last boss called M0, but what his nose was like, it was still a huge question mark. While studying behind closed doors, Tashigi sniffed the river straight into the room. As soon as she looked at the projection screen, her sister immediately recognized that she was beautiful. Seduced by soldiers at the restaurant 3 days ago, suddenly discovered that the Brockwood Up organization was targeting him. But Tashigi chose to stay invisible. Sweetened Peacock doesn't drop a word with Smoker or Garp. At the end of the session, Garp ordered Brockwood Up to be quickly rounded up before they could call the other bases. After receiving the order, he touched the mechanical marker and turned to tell Tashigi to stay at home obediently to keep the mule at the mansion. But no, this sister was different. After sucking a little morality from Helm, Ebo, and Kobe, Tashigi realizes that if he obeys orders obediently, he will be ruined. A good navy is to play by its rules. She twisted her neck and unfolded. I didn't stay. I also have my own beer to hunt. I would take the fine sword back from his hand, and anyone who didn't deserve to take the sword. Thinking that the milestone would soon be stirred for a fight, whoever was shy of the smoke nodded his stomach. Let her get on the train to follow her and return to the bandage. The young man's features are now tainted by the beautiful swim team, only staring at the beautiful sister. Although this sister looked defensive, she just wanted to see what kind of person she was. After a while of selling cucumbers and cucumbers, he confirmed that this sister did not have any damage at all. Saying it is doing, you make a decision to go underground, take off the dazzle and release her. The entire fire crew jumped into the damp room, consciously rising to the top of the pimples. But once the time is finalized, no one can stop it. Arguing fiercely, the whole group was searched by the faction before the appearance of Cactus Island. Open this hour and the jackfruit of the countryside has seized the golden opportunity, jumping into the bubbling water to escape. As soon as he carried his face into the small town, he immediately received a basket of glaring eyes from the natives. Thinking that there was a change, the mayor of Igaram came out of nowhere. He let go of a sentence that made the whole ice gray. Here we are with the pirates. Because this is a newbie island at the gateway of the Great Voyage. The garbage people realize the truth that it is better to hold a party to serve the brothers than to stubbornly resist and then destroy the house. Then, Uncle Igaram took over the role of guide, taking the group around the streets, accidentally bumping into a nun. She missed her mouth, hoping that these pasts would be more fun than the tulip pirates had before. Blood swelled, and Usopp quickly asked if the tulip tape was still staked here. Igaram waved his hand to fill the lid immediately, and while sharing the newspaper, the villagers prepared a whole table to invite the pirate brothers. The price is cheap, just sit and tell gossip in exchange for food. Who else refuses such fragrant candy? The whole band was dragged straight into the tavern. Usopp was slashed by the wind and blown the roof of the house. Luffy raised a glass of Zoro, stirring the water of the bar to enjoy life. Lost in the middle of comedy, there's only one serious young man, Zoro. His face was covered with moss. The reason was psychological residual after meeting someone who poured his eyes on the wine. Seeing that, Luffy patted his shoulder to comfort the road ahead, asking his opponent to give him martial arts. While drinking jubilantly, Luffy naturally craved a sweet head. Remembering that he saw a bakery on the street just now, the guy hid from the table. As soon as he filled his mouth with a piece of cake, the village chief of Igaram appeared behind him. Luffy chewed and peeked at the security that he would pay fairly, not the devil. But old Igaram turned his face faster than a rice paper, and he didn't care about the 3 odd silver coins. He smiled cunningly, sadly begging him not to trust anyone. Going back in time a little, Luffy had a front key for Igaram that would have 2 assassins drifting into the island. He was acting silly at the time, but he was actually the MZS of the Brockwood Dark Organization. Just as he was staring at Luffy, from behind, Midway netted his face out. The two combined sleep lullabies, Igaram with a musical instrument that blew a little numbness, combined with the seductive hip-swinging dance of Midway net. This succeeded in making Luffy innocently fall and roll around. However, he was not alone because on the other side, Sanji and Usopp were also involved in the idea of successor. Meanwhile, Nami is measuring death with a sister. With immortality, Nami is of course in beautiful opponents. Looking out the window, she saw a mountain that looked too blurry, so she was going to come and see. Mrs. Sister was drunk, and it was very dangerous to go to that place. But people say that prohibition is wrong. The more it is banned, the more it is done. The big sister immediately wanted to check in to see if she could. And just like that, when she arrived, Nami discovered that this whole area was a huge trap. The tulip pair was actually taken away to hide. At this moment, a strange voice came from behind her. It was the father who digged. After tapping him on the head with her hand, she flipped and ran back to the pub to alert the brothers. In the middle of the road, Rozo was standing buying a sword. The two looked at each other and immediately understood the problem. The whole town is full of Brockwood actors. The battle plan was immediately set up by Nami. Nami went to find Luffy and started the engine of the Going Merry. And the moss-headed brother is responsible for driving Usopp and Sanji to the rally point. After the contract, Rozo walked straight into the bar with his sword. As soon as he opened the door, he saw the young merger standing in a waiting pose. This was the ring that Rozo was itching to throw just now. Mergers are delusional of extreme power. Well, I think 100 chooses one, I will win with my eyes closed. But he had underestimated the monster. Named Rozo, the moss-headed man sucked on the maple with the maple. Slash away all of Brockwood's minions like slicing vegetables. Clear the road to go straight to the cluster. On the day of the nun, he also insisted on not sparing. Expelled to the merger processing floor. I didn't expect to see 2 friends working for a beautiful girl. Rozo immediately broke the siege and cooperated with the 3 of them to blow away the group and then pick them up. In another development, after waking up, Luffy dramatically discovers that Igaram and Midwaynet are secretly planning to jump the Going Merry. He immediately smashed the vehicle to the end of the escape train. This gong handling has caught Nami's eye. At this time, the quartet of Luffy, Nami, Igaram, and Midwaynet were sitting in the middle of the town square preparing to reenact the script of a Sea Sutra. Igaram sweated profusely, lying to apologize and trying to make amends. But before I could tell the suffering, 2 merger files in mid-Valentine came out. However, they didn't come here to apologize to Luffy, but the main goal was internal purge. As it turns out, Midwaynet is a snake in Brockwood up, but the acting is so bad that he is caught by Mr. Mergerero, who immediately sends an assassin to see her off to heaven. Talking about the ability of this pair of assassins, it's rotten. Merger File has an extremely unhygienic arrogance, flicking its nose and exploding bombs. And Mid-Valentine's sister eats the devil fruit that manipulates the weight, likes to be light like cotton to float in the air or heavy, like a weight to crush the opponent. This dirty and powerful combo forces Luffy, Nami, Igaram, and Midwaynet to run and play tiring hide-and-seek. In the midst of a drunken chase, Merger File suddenly picked up the speaker of the ward because it was always Midwaynet's true identity. It turns out that she is the princess of the 3rd family. Before the shocking information was finished, Merger File gave him a huge, super big nose bomb, blowing away both Luffy Nami and the princess who rolled their hair into a corner. The princess panicked and rushed to blame her, but she knew that her uncle had not survived. The responsibility of the country weighed heavily on her shoulders. She gritted her teeth and decided to leave him to survive. At the last bit, Igaram sent the princess to the straw hats to protect her. The bridge of her nose was still stinging because of the smell of explosives, and Nami was in need of a collar, begging for help from this mess of burns. The princess at this time confessed that she was in the wrong place. However, not everyone is lucky enough to have blood to run. The bomb had drained Igaram's blood, leaving him lying on the ground. The reward is 1 million belly. Seeing that Nami's money was salty in the morning, he pledged to keep it safe. So the three of them stealthily retreated to the Going Merry, leaving Igaram to use the ruined body as prey like Merger File and Mid-Valentine in the middle of the square. As for the two predators Merger File and Mid-Valentine, to lose their prey alive is a transcontinental oppression. Both owls search for clues. Walking through the pile of corpses in the bar, he accidentally picked up the remnants of Mr. Merger. As soon as he was reunited with the brothers on the train, an earth-shattering meditation sutra exploded. The princess burst into tears because she knew that her loyal uncle had died, and Nami stood next to her, stroking and comforting her new acquaintance. Thinking that the socks were broken, they went down to interrogate. Whoever is wary of the young Merger is tough these days. Pat her chest and declare her my home. I will let you die, not sell you out. Besides, you guys let me in. After living on the platform, Merger will also shave your heads. The tree because of his protruding attitude, plus being said to be hit by a black heart. Mid-Valentine immediately gained weight and stomped on the tough young man Merger. Returning to the vast sea, after a sob, the princess also calmed down and decided to hold a press conference to explain everything. She clearly introduced her real name as Vivi, the princess of the golden branches and pearls of the kingdom of Alabasta. It turned out that these Brookwoods were playing a hidden game of stones, spreading rumors to divide the feelings between the king and the people. The country is on the brink of civil war, so she has to lie down to investigate and has exposed the true identity of the last Merger Zero. Now her task is to bring this secret document to steal the armpits of the people to the king immediately. As soon as he finished speaking, suddenly from the sky, his face turned pale and sweat poured out like a bath. It turned out that the Going Merry had just picked up another uninvited guest. That's no stranger, Robin, aka Meet on Sunday, this sister who slashes the top 2 seats of the Brokewood organization. Possessing an extremely ghostly demon muscle, it can grow an extra hand anywhere, including from the opponent. But she dive here not to fight, but to give gifts. She announces that Nami's Corn Demon guideline is leading directly to Littergarden, an island of self-gods, which is easy to go to. Seeing that the children were absent-minded, they didn't know where the destination was. She generously threw them to the gift of the Eternal Compass to try the goods. This one is set to go straight to an isolated VIP island. Listening to her advice, going there not only avoided the monsters of the Great Voyage, but also avoided the pursuit of the Brookwoods. The beautiful sister will be safe if we all put their heads down. Needless to say, for the shy young man of Usopp, this is too good a handicap. As for Luffy, he bounced very quickly, but he bounced in the direction of going underground. He said no to her Great Voyage or her cheap organization. The beautiful sister who was rejected was not irritated, just stuffed her lips and smiled. From the moment they picked up the princess on the ship, they had put their heads into the guillotine. Good luck. As soon as MS. Beauty evaporated, the whole pillar immediately opened the shareholders' meeting. Princess Vivi sweated profusely and warned that, once Mids on Sunday had located the ship, the Broco-Up organization would know that sooner or later they would be touching the assassin and chasing the ice. In contrast to Vivi's panic, the Luffys were filthy as if nothing had happened. Vivi was very grateful to Luffy for saving his life on Dragon Mist Island, but she didn't want to put him in danger again. So she asked when she landed at Littergarden, Ain's Way. Later, the ship also pulled into Littergarden Island. The scene in front of them made the whole gang stunned. The island is called a small garden, but its fault is that the tea is so fiery. As soon as they peeked into the forest, hearing the warm roar of monsters in the distance, the two brothers Sanji and Rozo immediately asked to see who could hunt the bigger beast and come back as bait. Turning around, he found that Usopp had been bubbling up since when. Nami caught the card immediately, probably scared, so she helped her get back to the train to hide. At this time, the entire squad was dropped, leaving only Luffy and Vivi lost in the deep forest. Meanwhile, the sisterhood of friends Nami and Vivi went to sell melons. Vivi really didn't know how this ice could casually smile after Luffy hit Mids on Sunday like that. Nami patted him on the shoulder to comfort him like that. Leave it alone. And this is when they find out why this island is called the Little Garden. Simply because everything here is enlarged to size XL. Even the dinosaurs, people stood next to her like frog seeds. Having just encountered a long-necked dinosaur, Luffy was bloody and wanted to try to marry him. Saying that, the young man jumped on the top of the dinosaur's head, grabbed her by the neck, and dragged Vivi along her face for her to scream and intervene. Well, by the chance of riding a dinosaur, Vivi had to sit on the roof of the house and confide in Luffy, hearing about her childhood in the kingdom of Alabata. At the same time, Kwanzaa Sanji and Rozo clash with a tyrannical T-Rex. With the level of the two brothers, this monster skewer is just a nose. But when they stood arguing to see who was the one who robbed their lives and threw the decisive blow, the laughter of the buffalo children echoed from afar. At the moment of neglect, Rozo immediately attached a strange spell to his body. I miss you because I see that the score is not good. Actually, on this island, dinosaurs are not the biggest thing. The indigenous inhabitants here are giants. Returning to Nami, when she was going to go back to the ship to do ideological work for the young Usopp, she immediately bumped into a giant uncle named Zagi. These two blue-faced boys thought they had entered the pot as bait to drink. Whoever is cheap, Zagi invites a cultural exchange meal. But Zagi isn't alone. There was another giant neighbor on the island named Dory. These two men have been fighting each other for the past 100 years. So much so that we forget why we hated each other in the past. Zagi told me that his hometown was in the land of Elbad, where he met a giant at the end of the alley. While Nami and Usopp were drinking, Luffy and Vivi also bumped into their uncle and Uncle Dory. True to the standard sentence, don't look at the face and catch the picture. The uncles are as big as the top of their faces, but their gentle and cute temperaments are faint. On this side, just now 5 and Mid-Valentine also succeeded in visiting the island. As soon as they swept into the forest, they immediately bumped into the murder tree. The drunken guy touched the candle wax extremely stuck to create a weapon. Proud to declare that he robbed this rafter, because the boss was wary because he knew that the pilots had already eaten them. He let the other two live just to take advantage of their labor, serving the plan to overthrow the two giant uncles that the Luffy gang had just befriended. He knew that the two giant uncles would have the habit of curling up and smoking a few sips of wine before each match. So he was drunk and had to sneak the nose bomb into that wine bottle. In a far corner, Luffy, Nami, Usopp and Vivi were excitedly watching the shocking martial arts of the two giant elders without knowing the truth. On this side, just as he rushed into the battle with bored strength, Uncle Zagi suddenly came out of smoke. The Luffy eyes stood outside peeking in. At first, the gray soul thought that Uncle Dory was playing dirty, but when he rolled his eyes, he saw that the faint boys were now snooping sinisterly. The whole group screamed hoarsely, and Aunt Zagi's neck was held back, but in vain. Although Uncle Zagi knew that he was unstable because of the appearance of a giant, it was better to have a beautiful face than to have a cowardly reputation, so he was still dry to the end. Just like that, Zagi threw a key blow to lower his brother's voice due to the score on the board. Luffy missed the highlight because he was busy chasing after the fated guys. While the oil was boiling, the girl of the show's partner, Mead Goldenwick, loomed close to Ms. Dynamite. It was the owner of the tattoo, mysteriously drawn on the Zozo she had just now, and now Nami was also involved. As soon as they ate the brush strokes, the two naturally became dazed like drugs, going downhill without brakes, losing all their fighting power. Before the opportunity misses, Mead Valentine used the internal attack to shovel away the cowardly young man. Usopp fell into the abyss and then compacted Nami as easily as catching a chicken. The Saint Usopp was very free to throw right into the middle of the battlefield. Suddenly getting up, he flipped over the moment Dory heard the heartbreaking truth that Zagi had just been bombed with dynamite by the Brokewags. Hearing the bad news, Uncle Dory completely collapsed. The feeling of extreme regret when he accidentally killed his friend because of a small trick that made him go crazy, scream in pain, and then run away into the jungle in despair. As for Luffy, the young man who was fighting the enemy stopped because he saw a colorful girl who looked like a child. The hero's blood emerged, and Luffy was going to be kind enough to help. Standing in the distance, Vivi knew the opponent's cards and shouted at them and told Luffy to run immediately. But it was too late. Luffy was always involved in psychological manipulation, standing with his face out for people to control. Seeing that something bad happened, Vivi planned to run away with 3 out of 4 legs when merger faded out. The only hope at this time was on Sanji's father. However, while the brothers are living a bad life, this young man is still absolutely safe to return to the ship without being surprised that the rest of the crew is gone. Luffy was caught in the trap of her partner who accompanied Merger to pursue magic paint, and with her ability to paint, she manipulated Luffy like a doll to force him to play with goods and attend a tea party with her. Back in Wax House, The only person who wasn't affected by magic was Vivi because she recognized this trick in time. Vivi quickly wiped off the paint to help Nami calm down. Although Nami tried to do the same to free Rozo, the guy unconsciously dodged. Even so, Luffy still used a bit of iron will to affirm his determination to save his comrades, even though she was just sulking about his refusal to enjoy her tea. However, Luffy's situation at this time is still lucky compared to the Nami trio. Rozo, the only one who still holds a weapon, seems to be the last ray of light for the group. With his ingenuity, Nami successfully provoked the merger tree, tricking him into wiping off the magic paint to play a casino game. Rozo immediately calmed down. Everyone will immediately think of a merger zero sword draw. Since they both use a transducer, they can't recognize each other's true identities. In particular, Merger Zero is described as a bride-to-be guy who likes to smoke cigars and has an extremely similar demeanor to Colonel Smoker. When Merger Zero asked about the situation, Sanji was quick to speak. Despite being extremely speechless with this organization, Sanji still wiped into the actual battle. With his superior fighting skills, he handled both animals beautifully, although he himself had to receive many injuries. When he returns to answer the phone, Sanji wakes up and informs Merger Zero that his two beasts have logged out. Realize the person talking isn't the merger tree. Merger Zero was furious. The energy radiating was so strong that it withered the flower he had just touched. Before picking up the phone, he did not forget to let go of the threat that with Sanji, then hang up the phone and continue his journey to find friends. Meanwhile, Usopp was running to find power when he heard a familiar scream. As the giant Broggy, he still gave you a top-notch inspirational speech. Broggy asserted that Usopp was indeed a great warrior, and that feeling fear was the clearest proof of a warrior's instincts on the rise. The giant's encouragement as a spiritual medicine helped Usopp realize that everything now depended on him. She immediately fell into a state of severe psychological crisis. After successfully rescuing Luffy, the two immediately rush to the wax cake, but the scene in front of them makes them stunned. The wax had melted, and their three friends now looked nothing more than motionless statues. Merger Tree sneered, adding salt to the wound when he declared that the other three would only have a few minutes left. While hitting and backing, Luffy's rage reached its peak. He used his instinct to attack recklessly, but Merger Tree had anticipated this. He created a huge mass of wax that wrapped tightly around Luffy's fist, turning it into a heavy anchor cilantro. Anger surged in his brain, and Luffy was determined to make the oligarch pay the price. In a 3v2 match, at the same time, deep in the forest, Luffy is frantically searching for the merger tree. With his cunning nature, he created a series of wax cake clones that caused Luffy to hit the wrong target repeatedly, and, at the same time, continuously launched a series of attacks on him. It seemed as if Luffy had taken his own weapon away, but no, he took advantage of the terrible weight of that wax block, swinging his hand and smashing it directly into the merger tree's face, creating a counterattack that sold out enemies in an instant. When Luffy returned, he breathed a sigh of relief to see that his teammate, Usopp the hero, had indeed saved the gang's life today. Saying goodbye to Victor Garden and the two giants after rescuing Dory, the Straw Hats continued to sail. However, the journey was not smooth when a giant goldfish suddenly appeared blocking the way. Thankfully, the two giant warriors anticipated this. They launched a double fish water attack, opening a straight path for the Going Merry to enter the ocean lane. That night, the whole gang held a dinosaur meat feast. Nami is extremely excited to have another girlfriend on board, but the joy did not last long when she suddenly felt unwell and collapsed on the deck. At the same time, on the island, the duo Valentine and Merger Tree are dislocated when they receive a call from the boss of Merger Zero. Knowing for sure what the tragic outcome would be to live as a princess, Valentine's jackfruit planned to push all the responsibility to Merger Tree. But this guy didn't fit in either. He immediately killed her face glass to cover his mouth before ringing the phone. Back on the ship, Nami wakes up to find Sanji on duty taking care of her, although she tries to force herself to only be temporarily reminded to faint after the meal. Sanji reveals that she has been in a coma and has been in a coma for 4 days. This mysterious disease is progressing extremely badly with prominent black veins and gradually spreading down Nami's arm. After angry that she had to sleep to recuperate, Sanji scrambled to the deck of the ship, making an urgent announcement that the gang had to pull over to the nearest island to find a doctor. Despite her desperation to save her kingdom, Vivi is willing to put her own affairs aside, advising the group to prioritize Nami's life first. The next stop is the Ram Kingdom, a place that Vivi is extremely familiar with. This used to be a country with an extremely developed health system, but the people had a rather hostile attitude. The root cause came from the tyrannical King Huafeng. Referring to this king, Vivi remembered a bad past when she was 9 years old. During a world government conference, her father and Huafeng had a bit of friction. Carrying a lump of anger in his body, the fat king with iron teeth was a little angry by throwing a light on the head of the little princess Vivi. Contrary to Wai Garam's indignation at wanting to lose enough, 9-year-old Vivi showed an extraordinary upper body. She calmly looked directly into the eyes of her attacker and finally apologized, even though she had done nothing wrong herself. This act of patience for the sake of the situation not only made Wai Garam proud of future leader, but also made Zayton, the captain of Hua Feng's guard team at that time, extremely admirable. Returning to reality, even though they knew that this kingdom was full of dangers, the Hats of Swords still went in to find a doctor. However, as soon as they arrived at the gate, they were mercilessly chased away by the people. Despite the pirates' efforts to explain that they were only looking for medical help, a dialect still stabbed them in Vivi. Witnessing his teammates shedding blood, Luffy's madness emerged. He was determined to destroy everything, but Vivi once again proved his maturity. She stops Luffy, reminding him of the responsibility of a captain who can't act impulsively. Listening to the intellectual advice, Luffy put aside his ego, and Vivi finally met with someone who sincerely apologized and begged for mercy. This sincerity shook Zayton, and the gates of the kingdom were finally opened. Although he didn't recognize Princess Vivi at first, Zayton still showed sympathy and wanted to help Nami. However, he had to announce a message that all the kingdom's good doctors had been taken away by King Waffen. It turned out that not long ago, this country was attacked by a Blackberry pirate gang. Instead of fighting to defend his country, the cowardly king and his army fled and took all the medical resources with them. The only hope now is an old woman known as a witch named Kiriho who lives on top of a snow-covered castle. Although no one wanted to give their lives to a witch, they had no choice. Nami's condition had turned so bad that she couldn't wait until the next morning. Luffy decided to carry Nami straight to the top of the snowy mountain immediately, without taking a detour, and Sanji was happy to follow suit. The steep climb was extremely harsh and haunting, exhausting every last bit of strength of the two. With an extraordinary will, they reached the top. In a moment when his eyes blurred with exhaustion, a creature in the shape of a beast appeared in front of Luffy. Ignoring all surprises, the only words Luffy uttered before collapsing were a fervent plea for the creature to save his friend. Meanwhile, in the village at the foot of the mountain, the atmosphere of the remaining members was also extremely tense. Usopp tries to hide his anxiety by burying his head in errands, and Zozo is extremely frustrated that he didn't come along. Nagging Usopp for obstructing his vision, Zozo realizes that he really needs to do something more useful. He walked outside and stood guard with Zayton. Through the conversation, Zayton confided in him about the remnants left by King Waffen and longed for a new king to revive the kingdom. Zozo thought that Zayton was the most suitable person for that position, but Zayton humbly dismissed it. Noticing this man's precious qualities and ideals, Zozo shows deep respect and decides to hand over his sword to Zayton. Inside, Usopp tried to do odd jobs to distract himself from his worries. Meanwhile, Princess Vivi's mind was full of clues. Not only is she upset about Nami's condition, but she is also obsessed with her own image of the kingdom. Looking at the shady kingdom from a powerful country, this figure is only a shadow of decay. Vivi couldn't help but fear for the future of the kingdom of Alabaster. Understanding that thought, Usopp gently comforted and encouraged her. Although she appeared to be busy on the outside, in fact, the whole group of Shade Hats were sitting on the fire for the safety of the navigator. Returning to the top of the snowy mountain, Nami finally passed the suspicion thanks to the healing hand of the mysterious doctor. When she woke up in the forest with a bottle of infusion, it hit her eyes with a tiny creature. Wearing a high chop hat, is running promiscuously and especially knows how to speak human language. When Nami asks if this boy named Chopper saved him, Dr. Kurihara, the only remaining doctor of the shadows, officially shows up and takes credit for him. She talks endlessly about Nami's illness at a very high volume, but is actually taking this opportunity to test Chopper's medical knowledge, thereby showing that the boy is being rigorously trained to become a real doctor. After explaining in detail that Nami was bitten by a bug from a pre-civilized island and had been treated for it, the atmosphere was suddenly broken. Luffy rushed out of nowhere, screaming at all the wasps, panicking that there were people trying to kill him. The noise made Sanji jump up in a daze, intending to scold the captain. Thankfully, Nami was able to reassure them both, affirming that the people here had no intention of eating them, but were the benefactors who saved their lives. Dr. Kurihara also explained that she only soaked Luffy in warm water so that he wouldn't drown, because the freezing was caused by hypothermia. To repay the favor, Sanji immediately asked the owner of the kitchen to treat everyone. Kurihara immediately sent the chopper to lead Sanji to the kitchen. And it wasn't until this moment that Luffy's brain jumped, but the information and amazement realized that the creature was hovering. In front of him was a talking reindeer. As for the coward Wacom, it turned out that after fleeing the kingdom, his goal was to find Miss Onsande. Wacom himself was one of the notorious sponsors of Broco Up, and his original intention was to meet the M0 boss in person. When he had to talk to Miss Onsande, Wacom was extremely indignant and began to make a fuss. However, his concave attitude turned his face as fast as flipping rice paper as soon as Miss Onsande offered a gift of apology, which was a devil's fruit. The tyrant immediately opened his eyes with joy and devoured this precious gift. On another front, the Navy, led by Colonel Sir Mocker and Taz Higgy, was still hunting for the Straw Hats and organizing Broco Up, but had not yet achieved positive results. Impatient, Sir Mocker decided to break into one of the nearest naval communication stations to report the defeat to Gap. However, what caught their eyes was a desolate scene due to the attack. Seeing the trail left at the scene, Sir Mocker immediately blames the Straw Hats, but Taz Higgy feels suspicious. Going deep inside, the truth is revealed. It is Broco Up who is behind the horrific incident. A series of messenger snails have been destroyed or in the process of being destroyed, and 2 of the organization's agents are still at the base. Immediately, a clash broke out. The female agent opened with a baseball pitch with a powerful force on Sir Mocker's equipment. But with his class, he easily swung the ball back and knocked her down quickly. The other aimed at Taz Higgy with a sword, which he had absolutely no qualifications to wield. With the ideal of retrieving the sword from the unworthy, Taz Higgy easily disarmed and took down the arrow. After dealing with the catfish, Taz Higgy wondered why Broco Up knew their way in advance. Smoker brushed it off, insisting that they were just happening to be there, and ordered an inquiry into what the organization was looking for. At the communications station, seeing that the stubborn agent refused to show his teeth half a word, Colonel Sir Mocker did not bother to give him a blow and made him faint completely. Fortunately, they discovered that there was still a surviving snail, opening up the last chance to extract information from the recording, or the criminal organization's communications. Back at the mountain house, Sanji went into the kitchen to prepare the meal, Luffy trailing behind, and Chopper hiding in fear. Even though they knew that this reindeer boy could speak human language, the 2 of them used all kinds of tricks, even threatening to make him a barbecue, but it was still useless. It wasn't until they accidentally opened a yawn and pulled out a Jolly Roger pirate flag that Chopper jumped out excitedly, his neck tendons correcting that he was a reindeer, not a panda, as they thought. Sanji's delicious meal then pleased Dr. Curry, so much so that she offered him to stay at the castle as his personal chef, but of course the blonde declined. Taking this opportunity, the group curiously inquired about Chopper's grumpy attitude earlier, and from here, a tearful past story was revealed. The thing is that in the past, because he had the power of a devil fruit with the ability to zoom in and out at will, plus a strange blue nose, Chopper was shunned by his own flock. If Curry is a good doctor, but extremely realistic and cold, Healy Luke is seen as a dreamy, perverted rambler. This outspoken couple speaks to each other all the time, but they share the same opinion. The war-porn tyrant is pushing this kingdom to the end. While Curry sarcastically mocks the people for believing in a bogus panacea, Healy Luke believes in the miracle. He was even hunted like a monster by the king of war-porn soldiers. In the midst of Chopper being fatally shot and falling into the brink of the most desperate, a man appeared. It was Dr. Healy Luke, one of the only 2 doctors who stood close to the king of war-porn's arrest order, and the other was Curry. And his first miracle was to extend his hand to save the life of the little reindeer. Healy Luke is not afraid of Chopper's differences. On the contrary, he praises him, assuages his fears, names him, and brings him back to his home to heal him. Gradually, Chopper also opened his heart, began to talk, and became an effective assistant to the benefactor. This strange couple leans on each other. Although they sometimes quarrel, they're actually the only relatives of each other. The Chopper hat he is wearing today is also a priceless memento that Healy Luke has donated. During that time, Healy Luke was still working hard to research a miraculous remedy to save the souls of the people of Rome. To inspire Chopper, he tells the story of a Western man with a terminal illness who was on the verge of fate, but was miraculously cured, just by looking at the brilliant cherry blossoms. He pointed to the pirate mussel leaf depicted with cherry blossoms, assuring Chopper that it was not a symbol of evil, but a testament to the fact that no disease is incurable. The innocent Chopper boy has since inculcated a strong belief in the crossbone skull symbol, seeing it as a symbol of hope. But then the series of days of peace also ended. Dr. Healy Luke suddenly declared Chopper's wounds healed and coldly chased him away. Chopper panicked, making every excuse to stay, but he became more and more desperate, even shouting and chasing the boy. The innocent boy didn't know that. As soon as he turned to walk into the tent, Healy Luke sobbed. His terminal illness was in its final stages, and he would rather hurt Chopper than have him witness his adoptive father die in pain. Knowing that time was running out, Healy Luke came to him to ask Courier to extend his life a little longer to fulfill his wish, and at the same time entrust Chopper to her care. Courier out of the mouth of Nehemiah harshly refused and advised him to take care of the aftermath, but in fact she was extremely far away. Their heartbreaking conversation accidentally reached the ears of Chopper, who was hiding outside. The boy immediately ventured into the dangerous valley, determined to find the strange mushroom to save his benefactor's life. The day Chopper returned, his whole body was emaciated, full of wounds from fighting, but he was holding many amusat mushrooms in his hands. The boy was very proud to boast that he had found a panacea and longed to become a great doctor like Healy Luke. Seeing his adopted son risk his life for him, Healy Luke realizes that he has truly made a positive impact on his life. Even though he knew that it was an extremely poisonous mushroom, he still smiled and cooked the soup bar and ate it so as not to disappoint him. Feeling overwhelmed with a false source of power before leaving, Healy Luke tells Chopper that he will definitely become a good doctor, and then goes to the castle to save the doctors who are being held captive by Porn. It was only when Corey ran to find him that Chopper proudly showed off his swollen skull-shaped mushroom. The shock came when Corey angrily scolded him badly, telling him the cruel truth. The skull symbol in medical books is not hope, but a sign of hypertension. The boy handed poison to the person he loved the most. Desperate and remorseful, Chopper plugged his head and ran to the castle. At the castle, Healy Luke realizes that none of the doctors are sick. It's all just a vile porn trap to lure him out. Facing the barrel of the guards led by Zayton, Healy Luke left an immortal speech, affirming that a person is only truly lost when they are forgotten by this world. He warned Zayton of a bright future ahead for the kingdom of Rum, sincerely begs him not to harm his son on his way, then slams 2 bombs on each other and leaves to the surprise of all. At that moment, Chopper rushed in the form of a giant monster, crazy and wanted to bathe in the blood of the enemy. But Zayton, with tears rolling down his face, stood in his way. He choked up and advised him not to sacrifice his life in vain for a ruined kingdom, to live on because that was his father's last wish. That sentence completely knocked down the defense in Chopper's heart, causing him to cry and turn his heel back. Healy Luke's noble action also awakened Zayton, causing him to officially turn his back on King Warpawn and fight to open the blood to escape. Returning to urge the dose, Chopper threw away all weakness and ran after Kuri and begged her to accept her as a disciple. She was reluctant at first, but when she looked into the boy's heavenly eyes and looked up at her late old friend's cherry blossom flag, she softly agreed to train him. Returning to the present, after listening to that tearful story, Luffy quietly stood up and walked towards the Yang and pulled out the pirate flag. Ignoring Chopper's screams of discouragement, the hostile captain declared that he had always respected every pirate flag in the world. But this particular flag deserved to be flown proudly and admired by all. Luffy's actions and understanding touched Chopper's hurt heart, making the boy smile in a very warm and uncomfortable way. In the town, Usopp, Zozo, and Zayton were on duty together on the observation tower. The tense atmosphere kept a little when Usopp took the initiative to apologize to Zozo for his grumpy attitude earlier. Zozo was also very comfortable putting it aside, understanding that everyone was sitting on fire. Just as the brothers had reconciled, Zayton noticed a plume of smoke rising from a distance. His instinct tells him that something is wrong, and Zayton decides to investigate. Before leaving, he handed over the responsibility of defending the town to Zozo. Zayton insisted that if Princess Vivi had entrusted her life to the Straw Hats, he would also trust them to protect the safety of the kingdom. As for Vivi, when she was mingling with the people to support, she was shocked to realize the familiar figure of Miss on Sunday. As it turns out, the Brockwood organization is the source of the smoke, and the people Zayton is about to face. Indeed, as soon as he went deep into the forest, Zayton was ambushed by a rain of arrows. From the shadows, 2 of the king's powerful henchmen, Marco Rubio and Vance, came out to taunt. They happily announced that Tyrant Wharton had officially returned to the kingdom after eating the devil fruit. Zayton was immediately escorted in front of the cowardly king. Despite Zayton's contemptuous criticism that no one respected him anymore, Wharton only sneered. He began to demonstrate the power of the Baku devil fruit, the ability that allowed him to eat everything, and turn them into weapons attached directly to his body. Undeterred, Zayton instantly transformed, turning into a half-human, half-buffalo creature thanks to the power of the devil fruit system. The two sides rushed into a decisive battle, but the tragic end was that Zayton suffered fatal wounds. At that moment, in the center of town, Miss on Sunday directly came out to block Vivi Street. Although Vivi tried to use psychological manipulation words, advising her to give up submission to a madman like Merger Zero, all efforts were in vain. Miss on Sunday only coldly meant that between her and Mr. Chum was just a mutually beneficial cooperative relationship. Revealing a shocking news, it was Merger Zero who provided the devil fruit to Waffen and immediately recaptured the gold. Not stopping there, she also let go of the words close to Vivi's heart, affirming that this poorly loved princess will soon have to try to torment herself when she watches her friends and people fall one after another. Leaving Vivi in a daze, she left as if she were watching an interesting play. Knowing that Waffen was aiming for the castle, Vivi hurriedly ran to inform Usopp and Zozo. Realizing the urgency of the situation, the three of them took action. Zozo and Usopp are responsible for closing the city gates, defending the town, while Vivi risks using Usopp's hook gun to swing up the vertical cliff. Looking for Vi to ask for reinforcements. On the castle at this time, everyone was still completely unaware of the turbulence that was coming. The atmosphere in the hospital room was calm and a little deep as Sanji kindly took care of Nami. For the first time, the Peach Blossom chef opened up about his late mother and how his passion for cooking used to bond the mother and daughter. The emotional fake story made Sanji shed tears, revealing a weak hidden corner that Nami had never seen. But that quiet atmosphere was quickly shattered when Luffy opened the door and rushed in, announcing that Vivi had arrived. After listening to Vivi's update on the battle situation below, the group immediately planned a battle. However, Dr. Kurohara decided to stay on the sidelines. She picked up her gun and prepared to flee, assured that the Joker would follow her. But no, the boy resolutely refused. He insisted that if a war broke out, someone would shed blood, and it was the duty of a doctor to stay and save people, even if it was the people who had driven him away. This ideal of the Joker immediately scored absolute points, causing Luffy and the Straw Hats to look at him with admiring eyes. Once the preparations are completed, Sanji and the Joker return to protect Nami, while Luffy and Vivi are ready to fight. And the war really broke out, divided into three fierce fronts that took place at the same time. Following the familiar motif, the front side always had to eat onions at first, but then the game was quickly turned upside down. On the floor, Warpawn had just appeared and had a bad habit of giving speeches and was joking about reclaiming the throne. Standing in front of him was a Luffy who was calmly stretching out his shoulders to warm up. As soon as he fell asleep, Warpawn instantly turned his mouth into a giant metal cannon mount that was about to swallow Luffy and Vivi. But with terrifying power, Luffy clamped his jaw tightly with his hand, and Vivi slammed his mouth down with one hand. The cannon in Warpawn's mouth exploded backwards, causing him to fall into the corner of the wall, lying flat motionless. The second front takes place just outside the castle between Sanji, Chopper, and the henchman Marco Rubio and Vance. Although it was a little messy at first, with incredible kindness, Sanji and Chopper easily fertilized the two clowns, sending them out of the battle quickly. The third front was also the bloodiest battlefield that took place in the town. Warpawn's army, who had been swallowed and spat out by him and turned into monsters, was overwhelming and cornering the villagers. In the midst of the most desperate moment, Zayton appeared in a daze. As it turned out, on the way to escape, Kiriho caught Zayton throwing his mutilated body to protect the villagers. An argument broke out, but Zayton's resilient will revive the spirit of the kind, Dr. Goelinix. Touched by this true leader, Kiriho turns the car. She used a homemade ointment to help Zayton recover his form immediately to prevent the battlefield from being swept away. She then returned to the castle to fight. Returning to the main front, Sanji and Chopper's group, after cleaning up the minions, joined forces with Nami and Luffy. The group was admiring the captain's feat of defeating the king when Warporn, stubborn, crawled up. His face was now distorted because of the owl. He rushed into a martial arts duel with Luffy and of course was cursed by him for not being able to swipe his face in time. Furious, Warporn turned his anger slightly. The bullet went straight at Dr. Hilly Luke's cherry blossom pirate muscle that Luffy had just plugged in. Without a second to spare, Luffy rushed up and used his own body as a living shield to protect the muscle behind him. Witnessing that scene, Warporn laughed with satisfaction that there was hardly a more stupid act in this world. The willingness to sacrifice one's life for a torn piece of cloth. But his laughter quickly died down. In the midst of the gun smoke, Luffy was still standing tall, his body unharmed. He looked directly at Warporn with a determined look, and then loudly affirmed that the blade that carried the will and the life of a human being was not something for him to mock or bombard for fun. The rage exploded, and Luffy rushed into the countryside to live with the tyrant. This time, with a great assist from Sanji's thunderous strike, Luffy borrowed the momentum to rush away like a cannonball, knocking Warporn flying through the official window barrel and the tyrant flying out of the headlines. A beautiful harbinger of Warporn's demise immediately appeared under town. When the king was defeated, the evil prayer also vanished. The monster army that was overwhelming the villagers suddenly fell apart, transforming back into ordinary people in a daze. Immediately, they were surrounded by Zoro, Zayton, and the people and forced to surrender unconditionally. The Ram Kingdom is officially out of the darkness. Once arranged, she led Zoro, Usopp, and Zayton through a secret tunnel to go straight to the castle, officially reuniting with Luffy's group. Meeting again, the whole association excitedly recounted the past events. Zayton and Kiriha were surprised to learn that a boy like Luffy could defeat the Warpawn tyrant. Down in town, the team of Ebat soldiers who had been hiding for a long time has also returned. Leading them at this time was none other than the eldest sister Kiriha. With the usual demeanor of screaming fire, she immediately shocked the spirits of the whole group and directed them to quickly embark on the rescue of wounded soldiers. In the emotion of the end, Zayton fell to his knees, bowing his head and sending his deepest thanks to the Straw Hats for giving the kingdom a chance to rise from the rubble. Seeing that the atmosphere seemed to be drowsy, Kiriha subtly found an excuse to drag Zayton out, giving up his private space to the pirate group and Chopper. This is also the decisive moment. The Straw Hats officially invited Chopper to join his pirate crew. At first, the boy still had low self-esteem and guilt about his monster status and wanted to refuse. But for someone like Luffy, those 3 reasons didn't mean anything. The captain brushed aside all hesitation, shouting loudly at the enemy, declaring that they wanted him, that they needed a great doctor like him on board. That recognition was like pouring honey into Chopper's ears, warming Chopper's little heart. However, before officially setting sail, he has one last task, resolutely saying goodbye to his adoptive mother Kiriho. Originally a person who spoke the Buddha's heart, when he heard that his adopted son was about to leave, Kiriho was deeply hurt. But instead of holding on, she ruffled her porcupine feathers, using the most bitter words to scold Chopper as a dreamy idiot, threatening that he would not be able to survive in the stormy seas. Despite the scolding that took salt in his heart, Chopper stood firm in his decision. In fact, Kiriho wasn't angry at all. She was just hiding the loss and infinite sadness of being separated from her only friend and relative who had been with her all these years. After the noisy farewell, Chopper used a sleigh to pull his new teammates straight down the mountain. It must be admitted that reindeer and snowmobiles were born a coincidence. The group quickly sets foot on the Going Merry and prepares to pull anchor. Standing on the deck, Chopper couldn't hide his recovery. Understanding the psychology of the new soldiers, Usopp kindly patted his shoulder and comforted him, sharing that the feeling he felt when he first left his homeland was very normal. Suddenly, Chopper was startled to realize that he had forgotten his belongings on the castle. But Nami smiled reassuringly, pointing to the pile of luggage that had been neatly stacked on the sled. As it turned out, Kurahara himself had secretly packed everything up for him. This small action proved that she always supported him to pursue his dreams in the most selective way. In the pile of luggage, Nami curiously discovered a jar containing silver pills. When asked, Chopper only shyly laughed and kept it a secret to himself. Just as the ship stretched out to the great sea, a great scene that shook people's hearts appeared. The entire sky around the castle was suddenly dyed by a huge peach-colored cloud rock and cherry blossom petals flying strangely on the deck of the ship. Miracles have indeed happened. Kurahara used cannons to shoot a special remedy into the air, successfully completing the work of Dr. Heavy Luke's lifetime. Thereby, she also proved to the world that the dreamy old man was never a vagabond. If there was one person who could cure the whole kingdom of depression, it could only be him. Standing in the middle of a rain of brilliant cherry blossoms, Chopper couldn't help but sob. The nostalgia for his deceased adoptive father rises intensely, mixed with the choking feeling of having to leave the only homeland he has ever known. All of this made the boy almost break down in that moment of weakness. At that moment, Jojo, the famous swordsman, walked over quietly. Without saying a word, he bent down to lift Chopper up and place the boy on his left shoulder. That simple act is like a silent commitment that from now on, the boy has teammates who are ready to be by his side and protect. The Going Merry turned the waves and reached out to sea, stood on the top of the castle and watched the shadow of the wings fade, bowed and talked contemplatively about the young captain. They noticed that at the time of flying, they exuded an astonishing aura, just like the pirate King Goro in the past. And who knows, it will be this boy in the straw hat who will conquer the great treasure of One Piece. Offshore, the Straw Hats were jubilantly opening a party, toasting to the new Dr. Tony Chopper on joining the ice. The laughter and joking vibrated in the style of a pirate. However, in the midst of hiding in that thermal shirt, Vivi had a glimpse of sadness. She was heartbroken at the thought that as soon as she landed at Alabaster, she and the Straw Hats would have to go their separate ways. Grasping the princess's thoughts, Luffy reaps the thought, and he insists that the whole gang will go all out to help her crush the Broquap organization, free the kingdom from its cruel rule, and then they will all continue to stand side by side again. The group's declaration of willingness to sacrifice their lives for the people of Alabaster made Vivi choke with emotion. Usopp also looked at her with a bright smile, firmly affirming that she had long been a close member of the Straw Hat family. To prepare for the upcoming great battle, Vivi decides to release all the top-secret intelligence files she collected while working as an insider. At the end of the 0 hour, it is none other than Sir Crocatyu, a pirate who was once a huge wanted before being recruited by the world government into the ranks of the Seven Seas. His mysterious female partner Miss on Sunday's real name is Nico Robin. The true ambition of this pair of cards is to target the One Piece newspaper store, and the Kingdom of Alabaster is just an obstacle that does not need to be removed. And Alabaster isn't just a destination for the Straw Hats. At the naval base, after eavesdropping on the snail transmission, the duo of Colonel Smoker and Tashigi also quickly pulled anchor, heading straight for this kingdom. Although the full connection between Broquac and the Straw Hats was unknown, Sir Miker's intuition suggested that all knots would be converged and resolved at Alabaster. Thank you for your interest. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next exciting movies.